He opened the door expecting silence. Instead, he heard his wife's laughter, and a second laugh. That sounded exactly like his son's voice, only deeper, but his son died 3 years ago. Michael wasn't supposed to be home that afternoon. His conference in Boston had been canceled last minute due to a power outage at the venue. He didn't tell Claire he was coming back early. Figured he'd surprise her. Maybe even catch her baking like she loved to on Thursdays. As he stepped into the house, the silence struck him. It wasn't the kind of calm silence that welcomed you. It was the kind that waited. He closed the door softly behind him, placed his briefcase on the console table, and stood still. Then he heard it. Laughter. Not from the TV. From upstairs. Claire's voice. Light, playful, and then another laugh. Deeper. Rougher. Male. But somehow it sounded disturbingly familiar. Chills ran down Michael's spine as he remembered that voice. No, it couldn't be. He walked up the staircase slowly, skipping the creaky third step like he always did. As he reached the hallway, he noticed something that stopped him in his tracks. The guest room door, the one Claire had insisted on keeping locked for years, was open, not wide, just enough to let sound slip through, just enough for him to hear Claire whisper, "You have to leave before he gets home." Michael's pulse surged. His breathing grew shallow. He pushed the door open slowly, but the room was empty. Fresh sheets on the bed, 2 coffee mugs on the windowsill, a faint smell of aftershave. Not his. He walked in like a ghost. He ran his fingers along the surface of the dresser. It was recently cleaned, too clean. Then he noticed the closet, closed, but a small light visible beneath it. He reached for the handle, and just as his hand touched the doorknob, a floorboard creaked behind him. He spun around. Claire stood at the doorway, pale as paper. She wore a robe and her hair was still wet. "I didn't hear you come in," she said, her voice trembling. Michael didn't speak. He looked back at the closet, then back at her. She took a step forward. "That room is off limits, remember?" she said, forcing a smile. "You said it gave you nightmares after Lucas died." Lucas, their son, their dead son. Michael stared at her like she was someone he had never met. That voice, the male voice, it wasn't possible, but it sounded exactly like Lucas. He didn't say anything, just stepped out of the room, walked down the stairs, left the house, and sat in his car in complete silence. For 10 minutes, he didn't move. His mind was racing. His hands were cold. Something was wrong, something deep and rotten, hiding in the bones of his own home, and he was about to uncover it. Coming up next, what does Michael find hidden beneath the floorboards of that room? And why has Claire been lying for years? Don't miss the next chapter. It changes everything. Michael didn't sleep that night. He lay on the couch with a blanket he didn't need, staring at the ceiling as shadows shifted with the passing headlights outside. Claire never came downstairs. She didn't call for him, didn't text, didn't ask what was wrong, and maybe that silence was worse than any confrontation. At 3:17 a.m., Michael sat up and grabbed his phone. He opened the old security app he'd once used to test out baby monitors for Lucas. Back when he still thought he'd need them. The guest room didn't have a camera. It never had. Claire said it made her feel watched. He regretted listening, but tonight that room would give up its secrets. He grabbed a flashlight, crept upstairs, and stood once again in front of the closet door. It was still closed, but the light underneath was gone. He opened it slowly. The smell hit him first. Not mold, not dust, something oddly sterile, like a hospital room. Inside, hanging on the rod, were a few of Lucas's old clothes. A striped onesie, a tiny blue jacket. But Lucas died when he was 3. He never even wore jackets like that. Then Michael noticed the floor. It had a square cut into it. A trapdoor almost perfectly aligned with the wooden panels. He bent down, heart racing, and lifted it. What he saw made his skin crawl. A small space no larger than a crawl space, but inside it, a cot, fresh sheets, a small table with a half-full water bottle, and in the corner, an old baby monitor, still plugged in, still blinking red. Michael's hands began to shake. Someone had been sleeping down here. Recently, he stepped back, closed the hatch, and felt his chest tighten like a vice. Claire had told everyone that Lucas died in his sleep. There was a funeral. He saw the closed casket, but now he wasn't so sure about anything. Back in the hallway, he caught a glimpse of the attic ladder. It was down. Claire never went up there, or at least, she used to say she didn't. Michael climbed the ladder with slow, steady steps. The air was dry, dusty. Still, he reached the top, turned on the flashlight, and immediately froze. There were toys, books, a mattress, blankets, footsteps in the dust, and taped to the slanted attic wall, dozens of drawings, crayon sketches of a house, of a woman, of a man, of himself, older, with a beard. Michael dropped the flashlight. His voice cracked as he whispered to himself, "What the hell is going on?" One drawing caught his attention. It had a date from just 2 weeks ago. The handwriting was shaky, like a child's. It read, "Mom says you're not ready yet, but I think you're brave, Dad." Michael staggered backward. His knees almost gave out. His son, his dead son, Lucas, was alive, and he'd been in the house this whole time? Suddenly, the floor creaked behind him. Michael spun around, but no one was there. Or was there? He wasn't sure anymore. His world had shattered, and he was standing in the rubble, trying to understand what was real. What else has Claire been hiding all this time? And where is Lucas now? Don't miss the next chapter. It's the one where everything starts to unravel. Michael didn't go to work the next day. He called in sick, but the truth was far more complicated. He couldn't sit at a desk, answer emails, or pretend the world was normal. Not after what he saw in the attic. The crayon drawings still haunted him. The handwriting, the name Dad, it all pointed to one terrifying possibility. Claire had lied about Lucas's death. He needed answers, not suspicions, not guesses. So he started digging methodically, obsessively. First, he went through the storage bins in the garage. Claire had always been careful about what she threw out. But Michael noticed something strange. One box, labeled Christmas 2020, had its tape resealed. Inside, under layers of fake snow and broken ornaments, was a small fireproof envelope. He opened it. Inside were documents, medical records, psychiatric evaluations, and a birth certificate. Not just for Lucas, but for another child, another boy, same last name, same parents, but different first name. Noah. Michael's hands went cold. He had never heard this name before. The date of birth? Just 9 months after Lucas's supposed death. The documents were real, stamped, signed. Claire had given birth again, without telling him. And not just that, there was a photo tucked between the pages. A toddler, maybe 2 years old, with bright blue eyes and messy blonde curls. He looked like Lucas, exactly like Lucas. But it wasn't just déjà vu. It was impossible. Michael sat down, his mind spinning. Then, his phone buzzed. It was a bank alert, a transaction from an account he didn't recognize. One linked to his social security number. But with an address in another city, Claire had access to all their financials. But he never made this account. He clicked the alert and followed it into the banking app. The account had regular deposits, large ones, and recurring withdrawals sent to a private educational facility 2 towns over. Michael Googled the address. It led to a facility called Bright Hollow Therapeutic Academy. It wasn't a preschool. It wasn't a hospital. It was a private live-in program for children with identity confusion and trauma recovery. Michael's jaw tightened. The kind of place you'd send a child you were hiding. A child with questions. A child told their father was someone else. And the payment history went back nearly 3 years, which meant Claire had been funding this from their joint income for years. Michael had no idea. He closed the app. His hands were ice. And then the phone buzzed again. A calendar reminder. One Claire had accidentally synced to their shared cloud years ago and forgotten to delete. It read, "Pick up Noah, Thursday 3:30 p.m., use back entrance." Michael stared at the screen, then at the date, Thursday, tomorrow. His heartbeat thundered. He had until 3:30 p.m. to find out if the impossible was real, to see if his son, the boy he mourned, buried, cried for, was alive and had been hidden from him all this time. But the question that burned deeper than any other was, why? Why would Claire do this? And what kind of secret was she willing to erase their family to protect? You're not ready for what comes next. But Michael isn't either. Coming up in the next chapter. The pickup, the reveal, and a twist that flips everything on its head. Michael parked his car across the street from Bright Hollow Therapeutic Academy exactly 15 minutes before 3:30 p.m. He didn't want to risk being late. His hands were slick with sweat, gripping the steering wheel even though the engine was off. The building wasn't what he expected. It didn't look like a hospital or a school. It looked like a private mansion tucked behind tall hedges, with security cameras on every corner and a wooden sign that simply read, "Visitors by appointment only." But Michael wasn't a visitor. Not anymore. He was a father, or at least he needed to know if he still was. At 3:28 p.m., a gray SUV pulled into the gated driveway. A woman stepped out, blonde, wearing sunglasses and a long coat. It wasn't Claire. Michael waited. The woman opened the back door of the SUV and helped a small child out. The moment he stepped into view, Michael stopped breathing. The boy was real. Not a photo. Not a memory. Alive. His hair was lighter than Michael remembered Lucas's being, but the eyes, those same crystal blue eyes, were unmistakable. The boy held a stuffed animal tight in one hand and looked around with cautious curiosity. The woman crouched and whispered something to him before walking him up the back steps. Michael got out of the car without thinking. He crossed the street slowly, his legs numb, his thoughts racing. He didn't know what he would say. He didn't even know the boy's name. Noah? Lucas? Both? But then, before he could reach the gate, the front door opened, and Claire walked out. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was supposed to be at work. At a conference, she said. But there she was, dressed like she just stepped out of a therapy session, holding a clipboard and smiling, not at Michael, at the boy, and Noah. The boy ran to her, threw his arms around her legs, and said one word, "Mommy." Michael stopped in his tracks. Claire picked up the boy and hugged him like she hadn't seen him in days. Then, she whispered something to him and turned around. Her smile vanished the second she saw Michael. Their eyes locked. She froze. Michael didn't blink. The boy turned his head to look at Michael. He studied his face with the intense, honest curiosity only children have. Then, quietly, he said, "Who's that?" Claire whispered, "No one." Michael's world collapsed. In that single word, no one, she erased him, erased 5 years of love, erased fatherhood. He stepped forward. Claire shook her head, almost imperceptibly, but firmly. The boy clung to her, not scared, but confused. Michael wanted to shout, to cry, to demand answers, but instead he said, "Lucas." The boy flinched. Claire's face turned pale. The boy looked at him again, this time longer, and then, without understanding why, he whispered back, "Daddy?" Claire turned and rushed inside the building. A security guard appeared at the edge of the property, walking toward the gate. Michael backed away. He couldn't breathe. Everything he thought he knew, every grave he visited, every tear he shed, had been a lie. The boy wasn't dead. He had been hidden, and now the question wasn't just why. It was, what the hell else was Claire hiding? You need to hear what happens when Michael decides to uncover every layer of this lie, even if it means breaking the law and his heart all over again. Coming up next, the confrontation that turns their marriage into a battlefield. Michael didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of the bed, the photo of Claire and the boy replaying over and over in his mind like a nightmare on loop. He had called him Lucas, and the boy had said, "Daddy." There was no more doubt. It was him. The next morning, Claire acted like nothing had happened. She moved through the kitchen like a ghost, buttering toast, sipping coffee, humming a soft melody. Michael sat silently across from her, studying her every movement like a stranger in his own house. He wanted to scream, to flip the table, to shake the truth out of her, but instead he whispered, "Why did you lie to me?" Claire froze. The butter knife clinked against the plate. She didn't look at him. "What lie?" she said, too calm. Her voice held that same rehearsed composure she used at funerals, detached, hollow. "Our son Lucas, he's alive." Michael's voice trembled, not with fear, but with fury. Claire slowly turned to face him. Her eyes were glassy, wide, but not surprised. "You saw him?" she asked. Michael nodded. "At Bright Hollow? You called him Noah, he called you Mommy." A beat, then 2. And finally, she exhaled. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "I thought I was protecting you." Michael slammed his fist on the table. "Protecting me from what?" "From knowing my own child is alive." Claire's calm shattered for the first time. Tears welled up. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know how to face you after the accident. I blamed myself." "You blamed me, too?" Michael stood. "I blamed you for falling asleep at the wheel, Claire, but I never stopped loving our son. I never gave up on him." "You did." Claire stood too, defiant now. "You weren't the one who held him while they said he had no chance. You weren't the one who sat through every single test praying for a miracle that never came. You told me he died," Michael growled. "You made me bury a coffin that was empty." Claire looked like she'd been punched. "I had to sign papers," she whispered. "Confidentiality agreements. It was a trial program. They promised me he could have a second chance, but only if no one knew. They said the grief had to be real." Michael stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. "You let me mourn. You let me fall apart." And all this time, he was living 10 miles away. She didn't answer. Instead, she collapsed into a chair and broke down. Michael didn't comfort her. Not this time. His thoughts were racing. Who else knew? What kind of program would demand a fake death? And most importantly, why was Claire still seeing the man who ran it? Because now he remembered the man standing next to Claire at the clinic. Tall, confident, always too friendly when Michael met him once at a hospital board fundraiser. His name was Dr. Elliot Grant, and the tattoo on his wrist? A black circle with a vertical line through it. Michael had seen it before. In a photo Claire once kept hidden in her drawer. He had thought nothing of it back then. Now it screamed betrayal. Everything pointed to one horrifying truth. Claire wasn't just hiding their son. She was hiding something much, much worse. And Michael was done asking nicely. You need to hear what happens when Michael decides to go face to face with the man who might have stolen everything from him. Coming up next, a secret meeting, a voice recording, and a truth darker than anything Michael could have imagined. Michael sat in his car outside the Bright Hollow Institute for over an hour before he worked up the nerve to go in. The building was sleek, modern, and quiet, like a high-end wellness center rather than a medical facility. People walked in and out calmly. No urgency, no signs of chaos. But beneath that clean exterior, Michael could feel it. Something was being hidden in plain sight. He clutched the blurry photo of Lucas in his hand. Not Noah, Lucas, his son. The same boy he was told had died 3 years ago. The receptionist greeted him with a practiced smile. "Do you have an appointment?" Michael smiled back, equally rehearsed. "Yes. I'm here to see Dr. Elliot Grant." The woman typed on her keyboard. "Name? Michael Hartwell." She paused. Something flashed in her eyes. Recognition, hesitation, but it disappeared quickly. "Please have a seat. He'll be with you shortly." 15 minutes passed. Then the hallway door buzzed open, and out walked a man Michael instantly recognized. Even though it had been years, tall, silver at the temples, calm, calculating eyes, and on his wrist, barely visible beneath his watch, the black circle with the vertical line. Michael stood. "Dr. Grant," he said. The doctor extended a hand, already smiling. "Mr. Hartwell, I wasn't expecting to see you so soon." That sentence chilled Michael to the bone. He followed Grant into a private consultation room, furnished more like a lounge than a clinic. Soft lights, no cameras in sight, just a small voice recorder sitting casually on the table. Michael didn't sit. "I know about Lucas," he said quietly. Grant didn't flinch. Instead, he sighed, like a teacher disappointed in a student. "I was hoping Claire would tell you when the time was right." Michael's jaw clenched. "You told her to fake our son's death. You made her sign something that kept me in the dark." Grant leaned back, unbothered. "Your son was part of a pilot program, Michael. His condition was deemed terminal. We offered a chance." Claire agreed. "You used her grief," Michael snapped. "You exploited a mother who would have done anything to save her child." Grant didn't deny it. Instead, he picked up the recorder, pressed a button, and a voice filled the room. Claire's voice. "I can't tell Michael," she said on the recording. "He'll never understand. He'll never forgive me." Michael's face went pale. "You've been recording her?" Grant smiled faintly. "She records herself for therapeutic processing. Everything here is documented. For safety. For the record. Michael shook his head. This is sick. No, Grant replied. This is science? And your son? He's thriving. Don't you want to see him? Michael hesitated. Every part of him screamed yes. But he knew there was a price. What do you want in return? Grant's smile widened. There's a donors meeting tonight, important people, investors. I want you to speak. Michael blinked. About what? About success, Grant said simply. About how the Bright Hollow Initiative saved your son's life. Michael stepped back. You want me to lie? Grant shrugged. Or tell a version of the truth. One that keeps our work going. One that keeps Lucas alive. Michael stared at him. It was a deal with the devil. But then Grant said something that froze Michael in place. If you don't agree, you'll never see your son again. Michael has a choice to make. Will he sell his soul for one more glimpse of his son? Or walk away and lose him forever? You won't believe what happens next. Keep watching for what's coming in the following chapter. Michael stood behind the velvet curtain of the Bright Hollow ballroom, his heart pounding so hard it echoed in his ears. Rows of powerful investors, scientists, and journalists sat at round tables, champagne glasses glittering under the chandelier light. At the front of the room, Dr. Grant's voice droned on, praising the Institute's achievements, building toward his crescendo. The personal story, the moment Michael dreaded. And now, Grant said, we are honored to be joined by a very special guest. A father whose family was forever changed by our work. Applause rose as Michael walked on stage. The lights blinded him. The room blurred into a mass of curious faces. He cleared his throat and looked down at the cue cards Grant had prepared for him. Scripted lines. Fabricated hope. He didn't use them. My name is Michael Hartwell. He began, slowly. 3 years ago, my wife and I were told our son Lucas was dying 2 days later. We were told he was dead. A murmur moved through the crowd. But that wasn't the truth. Not the full truth. He paused. My wife made a decision. She signed our son into an experimental treatment without telling me. He was taken here, to Bright Hollow, and I was told he never survived the procedure. The silence in the room was deafening. Even Grant's confident smirk faltered slightly. I was lied to, manipulated, separated from my child. And when I finally found out, when I confronted the Institute, I was told I could only see my son again. If I stood here and told you that this was a miracle, Michael's voice hardened. Well, here I am. Gasps. People began shifting in their seats. I'm not here to sell you a dream. I'm here to say that no matter how noble the goal, no parent should ever be cut out of their child's life for the sake of an experiment. No matter how advanced the science, truth still matters. He looked out over the crowd, searching for one familiar face. Claire. She wasn't there, but someone else was. A small movement near the back of the room. A child, standing next to a woman in white. A nurse. Was a boy with light brown hair and wide, intelligent eyes. Michael stopped breathing. Lucas. He looked older than Michael remembered. Thinner. Taller. But it was him. The boy looked directly at Michael and didn't recognize him. Michael's voice broke. They told me he'd never remember me. That the treatment had side effects. He stepped away from the microphone. I don't know what future Bright Hollow is building, but if it requires destroying families to do it, it's not one I want to be part of. He turned and walked off stage. The room was in chaos. Some applauding, others murmuring in anger, and a few standing to leave, but Michael didn't care. He just wanted his son. Backstage, Dr. Grant confronted him, voice low and furious. You think that little stunt will get you what you want? I didn't come here to perform, Michael replied. I came to expose. Grant leaned in, eyes narrow. We still control the guardianship. Legally, you're nothing to that boy now. Michael's fists clenched, but before he could respond, a soft voice came from behind them. Michael? He turned. Claire, standing just inside the backstage entrance, her eyes red, hands shaking. I saw, she said. I watched the whole thing. Michael stared at her, too exhausted to speak. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. They promised he'd live. They promised they'd protect him. Michael stepped closer. Then let me help protect him now. Claire glanced behind her, where Lucas was now being led away again. And then she whispered, I stole something. Something they didn't want us to have. From her purse, she pulled out a flash drive. What's on this? Could shut the whole place down. Michael froze. This wasn't just about Lucas anymore. It was bigger, much bigger. She has the key to destroying Bright Hollow, but what's on that drive? Might also destroy everything Michael thought he knew. You won't want to miss what happens next. Stay with the story. The next chapter changes everything. The flash drive was small, silver, and scratched at the edges, but it felt heavier than anything Michael had ever held. He sat in his car in the Institute parking lot, Claire in the passenger seat, both of them silent. Claire's hands trembled as she placed the drive into Michael's laptop. Neither of them spoke as the files loaded. Folders, videos, documents marked, classified. Internal review only. Michael clicked the first video. A sterile hospital room appeared. A doctor in a white coat spoke directly into the camera. This is subject 9A, Lucas Hartwell. Parental consent obtained via emergency override procedure scheduled for 06:45. Memory suppression required due to emotional volatility post-phase 2. Michael's jaw clenched. Claire covered her mouth. Then the video shifted. Lucas, strapped to a gurney, eyes wide, terrified. "Where's my mom?" he cried. "Where's my dad?" Michael paused the video. He couldn't breathe. Claire looked away, tears running silently down her cheeks. "This wasn't a treatment," Michael said, voice hoarse. "This was abduction." Claire nodded slowly. "I didn't know. They said he'd be unconscious. I thought I'd see him after." Michael clicked into the next folder. Medical records, psychological profiles, behavior logs, notes that read like control manuals. Subject showing resistance to bonding with facility-assigned guardian. Recommend further sedation. Subject asks about Father Daly. Continue behavioral redirection. Michael scrolled through image after image of his son. Not smiling, not playing, but sitting in corners, staring at walls, a shell. "This was never about saving him," he whispered. "They used him." Claire took a deep breath. "There's more, look at this." She pointed to a file labeled pilot_program_spouse restore application. Michael hesitated, then opened it. What he saw made his blood run cold. Photos of himself from the past year, in his home, at the grocery store, with Charlotte, zoomed in from across the street, from behind fences. The Institute hadn't just watched Lucas. They had watched Michael. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. And then another video began. A man, sitting in a sterile interview room. His face looked just like Michael's, but older, thinner, confused. "My name is Michael Hartwell," he said. Michael froze. No. That's not possible." Claire stared at the screen. "They cloned you." The words felt like they shattered the air between them. Michael stepped out of the car, pacing in the lot like a man unraveling. "What does that mean?" he shouted. "That they replaced me?" Claire stepped out too, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know. But this Michael, the one in the video, he thinks he's you." Michael looked back at the screen. The man stared blankly at the camera. "They said I died in an accident," he said. "But I remember waking up here. I remember Lucas." Michael's mind raced. Had he been replaced? Was he the clone? What if that was the original? Everything he thought he knew about his life, his identity, was now a question. "I have to find him," Michael said. "I have to find out who I really am." Claire nodded, her voice trembling. "I think that's exactly what they never wanted you to do. You've made it this far, but the mystery is only deepening. What if the man we followed this whole time isn't who he thinks he is? Don't miss the next chapter. The truth is about to explode wide open. Up next, everything begins to fall apart. Michael drove for hours without a destination. The road blurred beneath his headlights, but his thoughts were sharper than ever. Was he a copy of himself? Had the real Michael Hartwell been buried somewhere? Forgotten? Replaced? The flash drive burned in his pocket like it carried radioactive truth. Claire had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, her head tilted against the window, but Michael couldn't stop replaying the video in his mind. The man with his face, his voice, his memories. If he wasn't the original, what did that make him? A shadow? An experiment? A mistake? Suddenly, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice spoke, calm, measured, too familiar. Michael, if you're hearing this, it means you've seen what we never wanted you to find. His stomach twisted. You have questions, the voice continued, but you won't like the answers. Michael pulled over, his heart pounding. The message continued. You were part of something bigger, you were not the first and you won't be the last. But you were different, you broke the pattern. Michael's mouth went dry. Come to 6th and Hanover alone midnight. No more running. The call ended. Claire stirred. Was that? I don't know, Michael said. But I have to go. At exactly midnight, Michael stepped out of his car into the shadow of an abandoned research building. The same address from the call. Lights flickered in the broken windows. He walked cautiously, every muscle tense. Inside, the air was thick with dust and something else. Silence, heavy and unnatural. Then a door creaked open. A figure stepped out of the darkness. A man, older, bearded, familiar. Michael stopped in his tracks, because the man staring at him was also him, but older, lined with years he didn't remember living. The older Michael tilted his head. So, you're the one they let out. Michael's breath caught. You're real. I'm what's left, the older Michael said. They took everything else. Claire appeared behind Michael, her eyes wide with disbelief. The older Michael looked at her and smiled faintly. She helped me once too. Before they wiped her. Michael blinked. What? The man stepped forward, eyes dark. They've been cycling us, Michael, repeating the same story, testing outcomes. You and I, we're just two versions in a loop. Michael stepped back. No, this can't be real. I remember Charlotte, the older man whispered. She drew me a picture once. It had 3 sons. You ever see that drawing? Michael froze. It had vanished a year ago. Now he understood why. The older Michael placed something in his hand. A second flash drive. This one has everything. The first was just a taste. But you have to choose. Dig deeper or burn it all. Michael looked down at the drive. He looked at Claire, then back at the man who was him, and wasn't. I'm not just a version, Michael said, his voice steady. I'm a father, a husband. I'm done being someone else's experiment. But just as he turned to leave, the ground shook. A sound roared from beneath the floor, and then lights exploded above them. Sirens, boots, dozens of voices. Target acquired. Both Michaels are live. Claire screamed. Michael spun around, but the older Michael was gone, vanished, and Michael was staring down barrels of weapons. What do they mean both Michaels are live? Claire whispered, trembling, and before he could answer, a shot rang out. What just happened? Who disappeared and who stayed? And if both Michaels were alive, which one is ours? Don't miss the final chapter. Everything you've believed will be tested. Everything. Coming up next. The end. Or is it? Michael's ears rang from the gunshot. He didn't know whether he'd been hit or if the sound alone shattered him from the inside out. Smoke curled in the air like ghosts rising. Claire was screaming, but not because of him. She was on her knees next to the fallen body. The other Michael, the older one, blood pooled around him slowly. His eyes were still open, locked on Michael with something between relief and warning. Michael staggered back, hands raised, heart thundering. Armed agents in black surrounded him, their faces cold, expressionless. One of them approached, not with a weapon but a folder, a thick, metal-stamped folder with his name. Or rather, names, Mr. Hartwell. The agent said flatly, your cycle is complete. Michael's breath caught. My what? You were never meant to escape your sector. The agent continued, but you did. So did Unit 0. His voice dropped. That, he nodded at the dead man, was the original. Michael's knees buckled. The world tilted sideways. I'm a copy? He whispered. The agent said nothing, just handed him the folder. Inside were dozens of documents, photos, notes. Project Phoenix. Test subject. MH. Variant 12. D. Claire's photo. Charlotte's birth certificate. Falsified. Memories planted. Everything he thought was real. Fabricated. And then the final page. It read, Reset initiated. Michael's eyes widened. What the hell is this? But it was too late. The agents stepped back. Gas hissed from the vents. Claire screamed again, but her voice blurred. Michael's world went white, then black. When he opened his eyes, it was bright, too bright, fluorescent lights overhead, the hum of machines. He sat up in a bed. A hospital gown clung to his skin. "Michael," a woman's voice said softly. He turned. It was Claire, smiling, holding a clipboard, wearing a white coat. "Welcome back," she said. He stared at her, confused. What happened?" She touched his hand gently. "You collapsed? Exhaustion, memory fog. But don't worry, you're safe now." Michael blinked. I had a daughter, Charlotte. We had a life." Claire tilted her head. "I think you're still dreaming," she whispered. Michael looked down at his hand. No wedding ring, no scars, no burn on his wrist from that camping trip. His mind screamed, but his mouth stayed silent. The door opened. A man walked in, tall, calm, clipboard in hand. "Ready for the next round, Mr. Hartwell?" he asked, and Michael's world fractured again. Not because of his words, but because on the man's wrist was a tattoo, a black crown with 3 red dots, the same one from the first photo that started it all. Only now, it was on his doctor. Michael smiled, broken knowing, and whispered, "Let's begin again." What if your life was never yours? What if the people you trust most are just parts of your programming? Let me know in the comments. Would you rather know the truth or keep the dream?